Jaden, no, don't throw the ketchup bottle. Lucas Lawson lunged forward just in time to catch the flying red missile before it hit the side of the food truck. His 5-year-old son blinked up at him, wide-eyed and innocent, as if he hadn't just launched a condiment at the grill. I was helping, Jaden said seriously, chewing on a corner of his toast. Lucas let out a breath, half laugh, half sigh. Yeah, bud, let's help with less throwing next time, okay? It was barely 8 in the morning, and already the Los Angeles sun was baking the top of the truck. The scent of sizzling bacon and fresh sourdough filled the air. The truck's faded blue paint was chipped at the corners, the sign above reading Lawson's Griddle in crooked red letters. Lucas had poured every dollar he had left, and then some into the truck after his restaurant folded almost 2 years ago. Between cooking, cleaning, and raising Jaden solo, exhaustion had become his new normal. He didn't have time to think about who was in line. Not when he had 3 breakfast sandwiches on the flat iron and a little boy humming Baby Shark on repeat. Next, Lucas called, not looking up as he plated scrambled eggs onto brioche buns. A soft voice replied, "Can I get 2 of your bacon avocado melts and a coffee?" Black. Lucas glanced up briefly. She stood out right away, even in a simple white tee and jeans. Tall, elegant, and ridiculously pretty, with long auburn hair pulled into a low ponytail and sharp green eyes that scanned the truck like she was committing it to memory. Her voice had that polished edge like someone who'd never had to yell to be heard. "Sure thing," Lucas said, grabbing a new pan. "You new around here?" "Something like that," she replied, sliding a 20 across the counter. "You don't have a tip jar, that's a crime." Lucas chuckled. "We accept verbal praise and snacks," she smiled, which hit Lucas harder than he expected. It was the kind of smile you didn't see often. Warm, real. "I'm Lauren," she said, reaching for the coffee he poured. "And this is the best coffee I've had in weeks." Lucas blinked. "You haven't had coffee in weeks." "I've had terrible coffee in weeks," Lauren corrected, taking a sip. "This is legitimately good," he grinned, wiping his hands on a towel. "Well, Lauren, you've officially earned free extra bacon." She came back the next morning, and the next. Always ordering the same thing, always smiling at Jaden, who took an instant liking to her. "Why do you come here so early?" Jaden asked one morning, staring at her like she was a Disney character. "You're too pretty to be awake this early." Lucas froze with a spatula mid-air. Lauren leaned closer to Jaden, whispering, "You know what? I ask myself that every day." Jaden giggled. "You should come with us to the park." "Jaden," Lucas warned, but Lauren just smiled. "Maybe I will," she said, "if your dad doesn't mind." Lucas looked at her for a moment too long. Her eyes held something, curiosity maybe, or interest. He wasn't sure what to do with that. "I don't mind," he said finally, voice lower than it needed to be. They started meeting at the park on Wednesdays. Jaden adored her. She never looked at her phone once. She chased him through the grass, pushed him on the swing, and actually listened when he talked about dinosaurs or jelly beans or whatever kids were into that week. Lucas tried not to read into it. She was probably just kind, friendly, maybe a little lonely, but then came Saturday. He was closing up the truck, sun dipping low, when a sleek black car pulled up beside the curb. A man in a headset got out and stood by the door like a statue. Lucas barely looked up until Lauren stepped out of the back seat, wearing a navy dress and heels that didn't belong anywhere near a food truck. Jaden ran to her instantly. "You came back," Lauren crouched to hug him. "Of course I did." Lucas just stared. She stood, brushing invisible lint from her skirt. "I was at a work thing. I needed real food." Lucas folded his arms. "That's your car," she hesitated. "It's a company car, right? And the bodyguard." "Security." He raised an eyebrow. "You in politics or something?" Lauren looked at him. Really looked at him. "No, I run a company." "What kind?" She hesitated again. "Tech, investment, a few things." Lucas didn't press. But that night after Jaden fell asleep, he looked her up. Lauren Langford, founder and CEO of Langford Capital, net worth over $8 billion. His stomach dropped. She was a billionaire, and she'd been eating his $5 bacon melts for a week. The next day she came back, but he didn't talk much, didn't joke, didn't flirt. She noticed. "Did I do something?" she asked, leaning on the counter. Lucas shook his head. I didn't know who you were. I'm still me." "You're a billionaire." She looked away. I didn't lie, no, Lucas said, but you didn't exactly tell the truth either. I just wanted to be normal for 5 minutes, Lucas. He stood there, arms crossed, the air between them heavier than before. I don't fit in your world, he said quietly. I make grilled cheese out of a truck. I have $50 in my bank account and a kid who still wets the bed sometimes. Her gaze didn't waver. And you think that makes you less than me? I think it makes us very different. Lauren stepped back. Different doesn't mean impossible. Then she left. He didn't expect to see her again. But Monday morning she was back, wearing sweatpants, no car, no driver, just her. She handed him a brown paper bag. What's this? He asked. Peanut butter cookies. Jaden said they're his favorite. Lucas blinked. You made these. I did. He opened the bag. Inside were perfectly round, warm cookies with little crisscross fork marks. You know, Lucas said, this is a dangerous move. You feed me, I might fall for you. Lauren looked him straight in the eye. Maybe that's the point. Lucas hated how the cookies made his chest tighten. He didn't have the luxury of letting people in knot when his entire world revolved around holding things together with duct tape and grit. But there she was, standing in front of his truck again 2 mornings later, barefoot in sandals, holding a to-go cup like it was armor. I didn't think you'd come back, he said, sliding open the service window halfway, pretending to scrub at a spotless counter. I almost didn't, Lauren replied, her voice quieter than usual. But then I remembered something. Lucas didn't ask. He didn't want to get pulled in again, not when he'd barely slept, worrying about the overdue invoice for his propane supplier and the weird sound his truck made when turning left. I remembered that I'm allowed to want something that has nothing to do with a boardroom or a headline, she said. Lucas finally looked at her. And what is it you want? I want to sit on a bench with a 5-year-old who tells me I should wear a cape because I look like a superhero. I want to eat greasy sandwiches that taste better than anything served on bone china. I want to talk to someone who doesn't care about how many zeros are in my portfolio. He leaned against the counter, arms folded. That sounds like a nice fantasy. It's not a fantasy if it's real, Lauren said. Lucas didn't respond. Not right away, he couldn't. Because part of him, the part that used to believe in second chances, wanted to believe her. But he'd learned the hard way that people with options didn't stick around when things got hard. What's your angle, Lauren? He asked eventually. You could be on a yacht in the Mediterranean. Why are you here? I'm not here for the ocean, she said simply. I'm here for you. Before he could respond, Jaden came barreling out of the side door of the truck, his face sticky with syrup and his shoes on the wrong feet. Lauren, he cried, arms raised like a champion. I saved you a seat on the curb. Lucas watched, stunned, as she sat down on the pavement without hesitation, crossing her legs and accepting the small orange juice box Jaden offered her like it was fine wine. He didn't know how long he stood there, watching them laugh about something to do with pigeons. But he knew it was too long. That evening, after closing, Lucas found himself pacing the narrow strip of sidewalk beside the truck. Lauren had left hours ago, but he could still hear her laugh. Still see the way she looked at Jaden, like he was more than just a cute kid like he mattered. He was halfway through debating whether or not to call her when his sister, Amanda, pulled up in her ancient Corolla. I'll keep him overnight, she said, nodding toward the truck where Jaden was curled up with a coloring book. You need a break and a shower, Lucas frowned. You sure? I'm positive. Besides, he told me he wants to teach me how to make jelly bean tacos. Lucas raised an eyebrow. That's not a real thing, Amanda grinned. I think we're about to invent it. With Jaden safely buckled in and waving like he was boarding a rocket ship, Lucas suddenly found himself with something he hadn't had in weeks: time. He didn't know where he was driving until he pulled up in front of an old theater on the west side. The marquee was dark, the entrance boarded up, but the alley beside it, that held a secret. A speakeasy-style jazz bar he used to visit before everything fell apart. And there, in the back corner, sipping a deep red wine and reading a paperback, was Lauren. He approached slowly, unsure if she'd want him there. You always read in bars alone, he asked. She looked up, surprised. Only when I'm hoping someone will find me. Lucas sat opposite her, the candlelight casting shadows across her cheekbones. Why this place? He asked. My mother used to bring me here after my piano recitals, she said, before she got sick. Before the world got complicated, Lucas nodded, absorbing that. I didn't peg you for jazz. I'm full of surprises. He looked around. I haven't been here in years. She studied him. Why not? He hesitated. Because I used to come here when things were good. Back when I thought opening a restaurant would save everything, before I realized passion doesn't pay rent. Maybe not, she said, but it keeps you alive. They fell into silence, the music wrapping around them like smoke. When the next set began a slow, aching trumpet solo, Lauren leaned in slightly. I want to offer you something, she said carefully, and I need you to hear it all before you say no. Lucas tensed. If this is about money, it's not, she interrupted. It's about opportunity. I know investors. People who'd kill for something authentic. You have real talent. I've eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants that don't come close to what you put on a paper plate. Let me help you expand. Not because I pity you, but because I believe in you. Lucas stared at her, stunned. I don't need a handout, he said. It's not a handout, it's a partnership. I'll fund it, but you'll run it. Your name, your menu, your rules. He looked away, jaw tight. You really think someone like me can run something big again? I think someone like you is exactly what the food world needs. And what do you get out of this? Lauren's gaze held his. A chance to be part of something real, and maybe something more. He didn't answer, couldn't. Not when everything inside him was screaming to protect what little he had left, so she stood, pulling on her coat. When you're ready, she said, sliding a single business card across the table, call me. He didn't touch it until she was gone. That night, he sat alone in the truck, staring at the stars through the windshield. The city buzzed around him, oblivious to the war inside his chest. He didn't know if he could trust her. But he knew he'd never met anyone like her. Lucas hadn't called her, not after the bar. Not after she left the card. Not even after he'd turned it over in his hands so many times the corners had curled. But the thought of her hadn't left him alone either. It trailed him like the scent of burnt coffee, faint, but impossible to ignore. 4 days later, he was elbow-deep in prep when Amanda dropped Jaden off earlier than usual. She looked tired, her eyes puffy, her scrubs wrinkled from an overnight shift. Sorry, she said, nudging Jaden toward the truck. My relief was late, and I've got to grab 3 hours of sleep before heading out again. Lucas pulled Jaden into a quick hug, brushing toast crumbs off his hoodie. You're a saint, you know that? Amanda gave him a long look. You okay? He nodded, too fast. You haven't said a word about her, she added, lowering her voice. She's not coming around anymore, Lucas said, slicing a tomato with more force than necessary. Amanda shrugged. Maybe she's giving you space, or maybe she thinks you made your choice. Lucas didn't reply. That night, after Jaden fell asleep watching an old animated movie, Lucas found himself staring at the empty passenger seat of his truck, where Lauren used to sit. She'd only been there a handful of times, but it was like the air still remembered her. The silence felt different now. The next morning, as he was restocking the cooler from a bulk grocery run, a man in a gray suit approached the truck. Not the usual customer. This guy wore a Bluetooth earpiece and carried a leather folder. You Lucas Lawson? The man asked, glancing at a sheet inside the folder. Lucas stood, holding a bag of frozen hash browns. Depends on who's asking. The man extended a card. My name's Brent. I work for Langford Capital. Miss Langford asked me to deliver this to you. Lucas didn't take the card. Is this about her offer? He asked. No, sir, Brent said. It's about something else entirely. Lucas narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? Brent opened the folder, revealing a single page. It was a lease for a commercial kitchen space in West Hollywood. Rent paid for a year in advance. The tenant listed was Lawson's Griddle. Lucas's breath caught. I didn't sign anything, he said. Brent nodded. Miss Langford did, on your behalf as co-signer. She's within her legal rights under the investment clause she submitted last week. You haven't accepted her partnership formally, but she's holding the lease until you decide. Lucas stared at the paper like it might bite him. Why would she do that without telling me? Brent closed the folder. She said she didn't want to pressure you. But she also said you deserved to know what's waiting if you choose to say yes. After the man left, Lucas sat on the truck's back step for a long time, elbows on his knees, the city buzzing around him. He'd spent years clawing for scraps, afraid to dream past the next paycheck. Now someone had thrown him a parachute and walked away without asking for anything in return. That night, he called Amanda. "I need you to watch Jaden tomorrow." "What for?" "I'm going to see her." He didn't wait for her approval. He already knew. The next day, he drove out to the Langford building. Not the public side with the revolving doors and mirrored glass. The service entrance. The one delivery people used. He figured if he had to walk into her world, he'd do it on his terms. The security guard raised an eyebrow but made a call. 2 minutes later, a woman in a navy blazer and heels appeared at the elevator. Not Lauren, but someone who clearly worked for her. "Mr. Lawson, if you'll follow me." He did. She led him up to the 23rd floor, past glass conference rooms and sleek hallways lined with abstract art. Lauren's office had floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that looked like something out of a movie. But she wasn't behind the desk. Instead, she was on the floor, barefoot, sitting cross-legged in front of a low table covered in papers and fabric swatches. She looked up when he entered, her expression unreadable. "You found your way," she said. He stepped inside slowly. "You leased a kitchen in my name." Lauren stood, brushing her hands on the sides of her pants. "Technically, I held the lease." "Nothing moves forward until you agree. You really expect me to run a full-scale kitchen again? I expect you to decide whether you're ready to stop surviving and start living." Lucas exhaled. "You're serious about this?" "I've never been more serious about anything." He paced a few steps, then stopped. "Why me? You could invest in a dozen places with better margins. Why risk it on a guy with a food truck and no credit history?" Lauren stepped closer, her voice steady. "Because you care about every sandwich you make. Because I've seen how people light up after they eat your food. Because you're not playing a game. You're building something that matters." He swallowed hard. "I don't want strings," he said. "I don't want to owe you." "Then don't owe me," she said. "Build something with me." He looked at her now, not the billionaire, not the investor, but the woman who sat on curbs with his son and brought cookies in brown paper bags. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. Lauren smiled, not soft, but sure. "Neither do I. But I know what I want." Lucas took a step forward. "What's that?" "You, all of it. The chaos, the kid with jam on his sleeves, the truck that smells like bacon grease. I want in." Everything in him wanted to believe her. To trust that maybe this time, someone wouldn't walk away when things got messy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out her worn business card. "I've been carrying this around like a parachute." "Then jump," she whispered. He did something he hadn't done in a long time. He leaned in and kissed her. Not like a man who wanted to impress her, but like a man who finally understood what it meant to have something to lose. When he pulled back, her eyes shone. "Is that a yes?" she asked. Lucas grinned for the first time in weeks. "That's a hell yes." And somewhere, 23 floors below, the city kept moving. But for the first time in a long time, Lucas Lawson wasn't just surviving. He was choosing to leap. The opening night of Lawson's Griddle, the new brick-and-mortar version, wasn't supposed to be perfect. Lucas had gone into it expecting chaos, a broken fryer, maybe a short circuit or two. What he hadn't expected was a line around the block before the doors even opened. He stood in the back kitchen, wiping his palms on a clean apron, watching through the crack in the swinging door as the crowd gathered. Strangers. Locals. A few food bloggers Lauren had discreetly invited without pressure. And at the front of it all, Amanda, holding Jaden's hand, pointing excitedly at the sign above the entrance. The sign read exactly what it always had: Lawson's Griddle. But now it glowed in gold script, mounted on reclaimed wood Lauren had personally picked out from a salvage yard in Santa Barbara. Lucas turned as the door behind him opened and Lauren stepped in, wearing jeans and a black button-down rolled at the sleeves. She had flour near her temple, he had no idea how, and a clipboard tucked under one arm. He blinked. "You're supposed to be out front, mingling with the investors. They're not the ones who'll keep this place alive," she said. "The food will, you will." He nodded once, heart hammering, not just from nerves but from the weight of what was about to start. "You sure we're ready?" "You were ready a long time ago," Lauren replied, then set the clipboard down and pointed at the window. "And if we don't open those doors in the next 3 minutes, I think Jaden's going to lead a coup." Lucas laughed under his breath, then grabbed the handle. "Let's do this." The next few hours blurred. Orders came in nonstop. The kitchen hummed. Lucas moved like he was born in that space, checking plates, adjusting seasoning on the fly, tossing garnishes with one hand while directing staff with the other. Out front, the energy sizzled. Amanda held court with a group of parents from Jaden's school, and Jaden himself wore a tiny apron, delivering napkins with the solemnity of a royal butler. But it wasn't until the lull between dinner rush and dessert that Lucas caught Lauren standing by the window, looking out at the street like she was searching for something. He walked up behind her, brushing his fingers lightly against hers. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. "Then, my father would have hated this." Lucas blinked. "The restaurant?" "No," she said, turning to face him. "The fact that I'm standing here with flour on my face, not wearing heels, not closing a deal. He always said I'd be wasted on anything that didn't scale globally." Lucas leaned against the wall beside her. "Is that what you wanted, to scale globally?" "I used to think so," Lauren admitted. "Until I met a 5-year-old who thought I was a superhero just because I listened to him talk about space sharks." Lucas tilted his head. "Space sharks? Don't ask," she said, smiling. Then her gaze softened. "I've spent my whole life building things that look good on paper. Numbers, projections, growth charts, but none of them ever made me feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I'm finally part of something real." Lucas didn't say anything. He just reached for her hand and held it, right there in the middle of the restaurant where everyone could see. Later that night, after the last table cleared and the staff finished wiping the counters for the 100th time, Lucas locked the front door and turned off the neon sign. Jaden was already asleep in Amanda's car, curled up with a stuffed dinosaur someone had given him as a good luck charm. Lauren stood by the bar, sipping something fizzy and non-alcoholic, her heels kicked off under a stool. Lucas joined her, grabbing a bottle of water from the cooler. "So, day one," she echoed, clinking her glass against his bottle. He looked around, the exposed brick, the mismatched chairs, the chalkboard wall where Jaden had drawn a cartoon version of the food truck. This place wasn't just a business. It was a second chance built on sweat, risk, and a kind of faith he hadn't believed he still had. "I owe you," he said quietly. "No," Lauren replied. "We owe this to each other." He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You know, I never expected any of this, not the restaurant, not you." She folded her arms, teasing. "What did you expect? Maybe a broken food truck and a kid who thinks jelly beans go in tacos." "That's about it," Lauren laughed, then sobered. "It scared me, you know, falling into something like this, letting go of control." Lucas nodded. "I was terrified too, but you still jumped. You were worth the risk." She stepped closer then, her fingers curling into the front of his shirt. "So were you." They didn't kiss like it was new. They kissed like it was something they'd been moving toward since the first bacon melt, something inevitable. The next morning, the city woke up early, as it always did. But this time, Lucas did too, with Jaden bouncing on the bed at the small apartment above the restaurant, shouting about pancakes and a new dinosaur shaped like a toaster. Lauren padded in barefoot, carrying a tray with 2 mugs and a bowl of cereal already half spilled on one side. Lucas sat up, groaning. "Did I die? Is this heaven?" "Close," Lauren said. "It's a 2-bedroom with a leaky faucet and a kid who thinks syrup is a food group." Jaden jumped into Lauren's lap with zero warning, knocking the tray slightly askew. Lucas caught the mug just in time. Okay, no more bouncing on people holding hot coffee." Jaden beamed. "Can we go downstairs and make pancakes?" Lauren looked at Lucas. "You up for it, chef?" He reached for her hand under the tray. "With you." "Always." They went downstairs together, barefoot and bleary-eyed, into the kitchen that now belonged to all of them. Jaden dragged a stool to the counter, eager to stir batter that would end up on more surfaces than inside a pan. Lucas cracked eggs with one hand while Lauren read off measurements incorrectly on purpose just to make Jaden laugh. The morning sun poured in through the high windows. The restaurant would open later, but for now, it was theirs. A family built not from convenience or luck, but from something harder. Something earned, love, unexpected and messy and real. And just like that, Lucas knew he hadn't just gotten a second chance at his dream, he'd gotten a second chance at everything. 2 months later, the rhythm of their new life had begun to settle, not into something perfect, but into something real. The restaurant was thriving, the lunch rush now spilling out onto the sidewalk nearly every day, and Lucas had hired 2 new line cooks just to keep up. While Lauren still spent most mornings in the upstairs office handling the business side, she was known to grab an apron and step in when things got hectic, even if all she did was hand out plates and exchange quick banter with customers. Jaden had adjusted better than anyone expected. He still had a habit of sneaking cookies before dinner and loudly insisting he should be the official taste boss. But he also started kindergarten without a single tear well, none from him, at least. Lucas had barely kept it together that day, watching his son march into the classroom with a backpack that nearly swallowed him whole. It was a Wednesday afternoon, the lull between lunch and dinner, when Lauren found Lucas sitting on the empty patio behind the restaurant, wiping down tables with slow, distracted movements. She set her laptop on a nearby chair and sat across from him, resting her elbows on the warm tabletop. "You've been quiet today," she said. "I'm thinking," he replied, not looking up. "That's never a good sign," she teased gently. Lucas glanced at her then, the corners of his eyes lined with fatigue. Jaden's teacher called. Said he asked her if he had to tell people his mom was just a lady who brings cookies sometimes. Lauren's posture shifted. "He said that?" Lucas nodded. "He wasn't upset, just confused. I think he's trying to figure out where you fit." Lauren sat back slowly, her expression unreadable. "And you, I think," Lucas said carefully, "that we stopped pretending a long time ago." She folded her hands. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying," he said, locking eyes with her, "that you're part of his life. Of mine. And if you're willing, I'd like to make that official." Lauren's breath caught. Lucas, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, not velvet, not flashy, just a plain white ring box with a single gold band inside. "I know this isn't how people usually do this. No tux, no rooftop, no champagne, just us, but I don't want to wait." Lauren stared at the ring, then at him. "You're asking me to marry you. I'm asking you to choose this life. With me, with him, with burnt toast mornings and syrup on the couch and customers who forget their orders. I'm not promising easy, but I'm promising real." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." Lucas blinked. "You're saying yes." She reached across the table and took the ring, sliding it onto her own finger before leaning in. "I'm saying yes to all of it, to you, to Jaden. To everything messy and beautiful and completely ours." He leaned forward, and their lips met in a kiss that didn't need an audience. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about certainty. A week later, they stood under a canopy of string lights in the restaurant's courtyard, surrounded by the clang of silverware and the scent of rosemary and roast chicken. The wedding was small, just family, a few close friends from the neighborhood, and every single restaurant staff member crammed into folding chairs. Amanda officiated, trying and failing not to cry halfway through her speech. Jaden stood proudly by Lucas's side, holding a tiny pillow with no ring on it because Lauren already wore it daily, refusing to take it off even for an hour. When she walked down the aisle, barefoot, wearing a simple ivory dress cinched at the waist, Lucas couldn't breathe for a second. Not because she looked stunning, which she did, but because she looked like home. They exchanged vows written by hand on the backs of old menus. Lucas promised to never judge her for adding truffle oil to everything. Lauren promised to love him even when he insisted ketchup was a valid pizza topping. They laughed, they cried, and when Jaden announced loudly that he was hungry halfway through the ceremony, they paused to hand him a slice of bread from the appetizer tray. The reception was a blur of clinking glasses, dancing in the courtyard, and laughter so loud it echoed into the night. At one point, Lucas caught Lauren spinning barefoot with Jaden in her arms, both of them glowing under the string lights. He stood still, just watching, arms crossed, heart full. Later, after the guest had gone and Amanda had taken a sleepy Jaden upstairs, Lucas and Lauren sat alone in the restaurant, the tables cleared, the lights dimmed. Lucas leaned back in his chair, looking at her. "So, Mrs. Lawson." Lauren rolled her eyes playfully. "Technically, it's still Langford Lawson. I have to update 36 business accounts," he laughed. "Of course you do." She reached across the table, lacing her fingers with his. "You know, I never thought I'd end up here, me either. I used to think love had to be perfect, polished. Controlled, Lucas raised an eyebrow. How's that working out for you? She smiled. Turns out love's better when it's unexpected, when it shows up in the form of a grilled cheese and a kid who thinks syrup belongs on everything. He stood, walked around the table, and pulled her to her feet. They danced slowly, no music, just the hum of the city outside and the soft shuffle of their feet on the worn wood floor. I love you, he whispered, his voice low against her ear. She leaned into him. And I love you, all of you. They didn't need anything else. Not the billions, not the headlines, not the polished image, they had each other. They had built something no money could ever buy, and neither of them would ever let it go. 3 years later, the restaurant had expanded to 2 more locations. Still family-run, still with the original recipes scribbled on flour-stained index cards. Lauren stepped back from the board of Langford Capital, handing over daily operations to a new CEO she trusted, and instead focused on a foundation. She started with Amanda offering culinary scholarships to single parents chasing second chances. Jaden, now 8, ran the junior tasting panel, a very serious group composed of himself and 2 of his best friends. Their rating system was entirely based on how many bites were taken before they started talking about dinosaurs. And on a warm Saturday morning, Lucas stood behind the restaurant's counter, watching Lauren teach Jaden how to flip pancakes without splashing batter on the walls. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. This was his life now, not a fantasy. Not a dream, just a beautiful, chaotic, perfect reality, and he wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.